I had 30 minutes to live, maybe less. The water around my legs was killing me with every step, but if I turned back, half of Europe would become a graveyard. The Geiger counter on my chest was screaming now. Not the slow clicks we heard upstairs, but a frantic metallic shriek that meant death was crawling into my bones with every breath. April 26, 1986. Reactor 4 had exploded 6 hours ago, and I was wading through knee-deep radioactive water in the basement, carrying nothing but a wrench and the weight of 20 million lives on my shoulders. My name is Alexei Ananenko, and they sent me down here to die. The officials upstairs whispered it when they thought we couldn't hear. Suicide mission, they called it. Someone has to do it, but they won't come back. The water around my boots glowed with an evil blue light. Every step sent ripples of liquid death across the flooded corridor. Behind me, my friends Valerie and Boris were breathing hard through their masks. We'd worked together for years, fixed pipes, calibrated systems, shared jokes during lunch breaks. Now we were walking into hell together, and none of us said what we all knew. This was goodbye to our families, our children, our futures. The flashlight in my hand flickered as we moved deeper. These weren't normal basement corridors anymore. The explosion had twisted metal beams like toy snakes. Concrete chunks floated past us like deadly icebergs. Steam rose from the water, carrying the smell of burnt metal and something else, something that made your throat burn just breathing it in. Alexei, the reading's off the charts, Valerie whispered, his voice muffled by the respirator. His radiation detector was clicking so fast it sounded like angry insects. Mine was doing the same. We were walking through invisible fire, and it was cooking us from the inside. Every second down here was stealing years from our lives. But somewhere in this flooded maze were the valves. The valves that would drain the suppression pools before the molten reactor core could reach them. Because if that happened, if 2,000 tons of molten uranium hit those water pools, the explosion would make today's disaster look like a firecracker. It would flatten Kiev. It would poison everything from here to Germany. I knew these corridors better than anyone. 10 years I'd worked here, crawled through these spaces, memorized every pipe and valve. But that was before the explosion. Before the radiation turned this place into a nightmare. The water was getting deeper now, almost up to our knees. Each step was like walking through thick syrup that wanted to pull you down and never let go. Boris stumbled behind me, caught himself against a twisted pipe. "I can't see anything," he gasped. The steam was getting thicker, making our flashlight beams look like weak candles in fog. That's when I heard it, a sound that made my blood freeze. Metal groaning, deep and long, like the building was crying in pain. Somewhere above us, tons of radioactive debris were shifting, settling, maybe getting ready to collapse and bury us alive in this poisoned water. "We have to move faster," I said, but my voice came out as a croak. The radiation was already working on my throat, my lungs. I could taste metal in my mouth, feel my teeth starting to ache. This was what dying felt like, and we were just getting started. The corridor split ahead of us. Left or right. In the dark, with steam everywhere and our flashlights failing, it all looked the same. But I remembered. Years of walking these halls, checking systems, doing routine maintenance. The main valves were to the left, through a door marked with radiation warnings that seemed like jokes now. We turned left, and the water got even deeper. It was up to our thighs now, soaking through our suits, carrying its invisible poison directly against our skin. Every step was agony, not physical pain, but the mental torture of knowing we were dying and choosing to keep walking anyway. "There!" Boris shouted, pointing ahead. Through the murky water and steam, we could see it. The valve wheel, big and round like a ship's steering wheel, mounted on the wall just above the water line. This was it. This was what we'd come to die for. But as we got closer, my heart sank. The valve was stuck, rusted shut by years of moisture, and now jammed tight by the force of the explosion. I pulled the adjustable wrench from my belt, the one I'd grabbed from my toolbox upstairs. My hands were shaking now, and not from fear. The radiation was attacking my nervous system, making my muscles twitch and spasm. "Hold the flashlight steady," I told Valerie. The beam wavered as he tried to control his trembling hands. I fitted the wrench around the valve wheel and pulled. Nothing. The metal had welded itself together with rust and debris. Above us, that groaning sound came again, louder this time. The building was coming apart piece by piece, and we were directly underneath it all. "It won't budge," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I was positioning the wrench differently, using leverage, using everything I'd learned in 20 years of engineering. Boris moved to help me, his hands closing over mine on the wrench handle. Together we pulled, our feet slipping in the radioactive sludge, our breathing getting harder with each second. The Geiger counters were screaming now, a constant electronic shriek that meant we were absorbing enough radiation to kill a dozen men. But something was happening. The valve was moving, just a fraction of an inch, but moving. Again, I shouted, and we threw our whole bodies into it. Metal scraped against metal, a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard, and suddenly the wheel spun free. Water started rushing past us, a miniature whirlpool forming around the drain. 20,000 tons of it, flowing out and away from the molten core upstairs. We'd done it. The suppression pools were draining. Europe would live to see another day. But as we stood there in the diminishing flood, watching our radiation detectors continue their death song, we all knew the price. "How long do you think we have?" Boris asked quietly. None of us answered because we all knew. Days, maybe weeks if we were lucky. The amount of radiation we'd absorbed would kill us slowly, painfully from the inside out. We started the long walk back, our boots splashing through water that was now only ankle deep. The building groaned around us, metal settling into new configurations of destruction. Our flashlights were dimming, the batteries drained by radiation, and our own bodies were starting to fail. Valerie collapsed against a wall, his breathing ragged. "I can't feel my hands," he whispered. The radiation was attacking his nerves, shutting down his body piece by piece. We helped him walk, three men who'd thought they were walking to their deaths, and had succeeded in their mission anyway. When we finally climbed out of that basement, back into the chaos and panic of the control room, nobody cheered. Nobody celebrated. They just stared at us like we were ghosts, which maybe we were. The officials who'd sent us down there couldn't meet our eyes. They knew they'd ordered our execution, and we'd carried it out willingly. "Did you get the valves?" someone asked. I just nodded, too exhausted and too poisoned to speak. The hard part was over. Now came the waiting, the slow countdown to see if the radiation would claim us, or if somehow, impossibly, we'd survive. But here's the thing nobody talks about, the secret they don't tell you in the history books. We didn't feel like heroes. We felt like men who'd done their job, nothing more. Engineers fix things when they break, even when fixing them kills you. That's not heroism, that's just responsibility. When the reactor exploded, when the basement flooded with poison, when millions of lives hung in the balance, we fixed it because that's what engineers do. The radiation was just another occupational hazard, like a gas leak or electrical fire, except this one would follow us home and live in our bones forever. Years passed. The Soviet Union fell. Ukraine became free. And slowly, incredibly, we realized we weren't going to die. Not from the radiation, anyway. Valerie and I are still here, still alive, still trying to convince people we weren't heroes. Boris passed away in 2005, but from a heart attack, not radiation poisoning. The doctors said it was impossible, that we should have been dead within weeks. But sometimes impossible things happen when ordinary people do extraordinary jobs. Sometimes the universe rewards duty with survival, sacrifice with second chances. Today, I live quietly in Kiev with my memories and my radiation detector, which still clicks occasionally near my chest, a metal reminder of that day in the basement. People call me a hero now, give me medals, want to shake my hand. Ukraine's president gave me the Golden Star, the country's highest honor. But I still tell them the same thing I told the reporters, the same thing I'll tell anyone who asks. I was just doing my job. The reactor broke. We fixed it. That's what engineers do. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I wonder about the other timeline. The one where we turned back, where fear won over duty, where the molten core reached those water pools and turned half of Europe into a radioactive wasteland. In that world, millions died because 3 men were too afraid to walk through poisoned water. In that world, children never lived to grow up, cities became ghost towns, and humanity learned that some problems can't be fixed because the people who know how to fix them are too scared to try. We chose differently. We chose to walk into that basement knowing we probably wouldn't walk out. And that choice, That moment of controlled terror where duty overcame fear, saved more lives than any of us could count. Share this story to remember that heroes aren't people who don't feel afraid. Heroes are people who feel afraid and do their job anyway, because someone has to, and maybe today that someone is you.